Welcome back to Reunited States, the podcast where we bring rational discourse back to our national dialogue. From Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Erig.
And we have a lot to talk about again this week. You know, every week it's more and more kind of craziness going on. We've had a tariff scare that is rocking our economic stability, rocking Wall Street, and then, you know, again, it's kind of like he's playing footsie with the tariffs. It's like, oh, you know, we're on one day, off again the next day. So that's been very interesting. And then, you know, we've also got kind of the responses from the Democratic Party and from the progressive wing of the party as well to analyze and discuss. Tyler, what do you want to start with first today?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. You know, I want to spend a bit of time at some point talking about the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia as well. It's been dominating headlines.
As it should.
Rightfully so. It's a huge constitutional crisis. But let's start talking about some tariffs for a second, because we were going to talk about this last week, but we had some technical issues and I got COVID. So the tariff situation is such a frustrating one. As we've talked about personally, it makes no strategic sense. There's no reason why we're doing this. It does nothing but hurt the economies of the U.S. as well as virtually every other economy that's impacted by this. And what's even more frustrating now is, you know, we saw the effect that it has on the stock market. A lot of voices being rightfully concerned about this. Voices across economic, statuses, right? And the thing that frustrated me most about this whole tariff business and the back and forth is that, like, at the point in time when we had the, you know, some of the worst drops in the stock market, and Trump finally decides to double back on something. What does he double back on? Electronics, phones, and computers. That's the thing he decides to give an exception to the import tariffs on China and on other countries.
Yeah, who does that benefit?
Yeah, exactly. Pure commodities, pure unnecessary commodities. Cell phones and computers, seriously? Like, how is that going to help grocery store prices? It doesn't, right? Like, it doesn't help anything but the people who want to buy a stupid iPhone or computer. Like, that is so ridiculously tone deaf to the actual people who are hurting in America because of these insane foreign policy decisions. And that is just, it's so frustrating to me. So frustrating to me to see how blatantly obvious the people at the top are making it, that this entire situation only exists to line the pockets of the wealthy. You remember there was even a meeting with Trump and a handful of other, like, billionaires or whatever in the White House. And they're talking about how much money they were making as a result of that reversal. How many millions and billions of dollars that they're making because of the changes. And Trump himself, who was responsible for these changes, is telling him, you made this much money. Great job. That is disgusting. I mean, that is just disgusting. And they're not even trying to hide it, because why would they? Why would they need to hide it anymore? Exactly. It's awful. It's so awful. It pisses me off, grinds my gears. And now what's ever more frustrating is that there is really not a way to change this. Like, there isn't really a way to change this now. Like, what can we do? They have the House, the Senate, the President, they have everything. And as we're about to see with, when we talk a bit later about the immigration crisis, the courts don't even have that power over the executive branch, so it seems right now.
Well, yeah, and and we should bring up, mentioned, and we shared this on Instagram as well, but, earlier this week, Lisa Murkowski, Republican senator from Alaska, who has been very critical of Trump, did not support him when he was running for president this past time, did not support Biden either, we should clarify, or Kamala, I should say. But she came out. They asked her at a town hall event, or it wasn't even a town hall event, I take it back. They asked her at a fundraising event how she feels or what she would say to the people who are afraid. And she basically, you could see tears in her eyes, said, "We are all afraid." And, how remarkable a statement it is for a U.S. senator to be saying that she's afraid. And she even addressed the retribution. The fear over retribution right now is scaring a lot of people. And I thought that
retribution that, by the way, we knew was going to happen.
Yes.
That's the thing we'll never stop repeating because, literally, he said it. Yes. I am your retribution. Come on now.
Yeah, and so...
People are scared of it? Well, guess what? You're scared of something that you knew was going to happen, that everybody knew what was going to happen.
Yes.
That's the thing that gets me a little bit with Murkowski, with a lot of other Republicans who are now all, kind of scared. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy you're at least saying something. True. But let's not get it twisted. There is nothing unprecedented about, or nothing, I should say, there is nothing surprising about what you're afraid of.
I think I give Murkowski more of more leeway than a lot of people are, because, this is a person who voted to impeach the president after January 6th. She did not support him. She has opposed many of his most ridiculous nominees. Murkowski is the first most reasonable Republican. She's the sort of person that I miss being able to disagree with. Because, those were the days when I could have a reasonable discussion with a Republican, a moderate Republican who also, doesn't want to destroy the fabric of democracy. And so, this is not a cultist person. This is somebody who has spoken out. I think that, do I wish she would speak out more? Do I wish that she was doing more to buck her party? Do I wish she would just dump her party in general? Of course I do. But the reality is, if she leaves the Republican Party, or if she chooses not to run for re-election, she will be replaced by someone worse. And this is another thing that I want to address here today, something that has been kind of on my mind, because I will openly admit I was also very critical of many of the people who were in the Trump administration, in the first Trump administration, who kept saying, people like John Kelly, people who said, like General Mattis, who said, I was there to try and limit his worst instincts. I was there because it was a duty to the country and that I had to prevent it from being worse. And I think in some capacity, while yes, I think they also enabled him to do really horrible things in his first term, look at the result of those people not being in the room anymore. The results are atrocious. And this is the fear that I have. Things can always get worse. Someone like Murkowski or Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who was a Democrat who drove all of us nuts, they can always get worse. Right now in the U.S. Senate, you have a guy named Jim Justice in West Virginia who's a crazy, right-wing extremist, MAGA guy, instead of having somebody who voted with Democrats 60-70% of the time. What would you rather have? This is the reality of the situation that we're facing. And so someone like Murkowski, yes, I get it. I'm frustrated with someone like her coming out here and saying this, because you didn't do enough to prevent us from getting to the place where we are today. But it's not like she was on board with the Trump movement for any significant amount of time. It's not like she hasn't been a very independent voice throughout the Trump years. And the fact that she's afraid for her safety, I think is something that a lot of Republicans feel right now. And we sit here and we wonder, why are they not turning? For many of them up till this point, it has been a fear of losing their job. And I have no sympathy whatsoever for anyone who's cowardly enough to fear losing their job. But if you look at somebody like Mitt Romney, who dealt with the kind of death threats that he dealt with when he first voted to impeach President Trump, you look at and someone who went back to his district, went back to his home, and neighbors would not speak to him. You know, he couldn't go to the same restaurants that he had gone to. His friends stopped talking to him. Like, this is the situation for so many of these Republicans. It is their entire community of people in this world in which we have ideologically segregated ourselves. It is this entire group of people who have drank the Kool-Aid, for lack of a better term, a Jonestown reference, but who have bought into this. And the minute you step outside of that, you lose your entire community. So imagine if it was you. Imagine if the Democratic Party went too far. If you're a progressive person, if they went way too far into this sort of thing, and you stepping out of line or voicing opposition meant that you were losing friends. And I say this as somebody who has lost friends over opinions.
I was going to say, we've seen that.
Yes.
Not quite as extreme, because we don't have really a MAGA movement equivalent yet.
Yes.
Although it certainly seems like we might in the near future. But we've seen elements of that.
Yeah, and the difference has been that I'm never afraid that those people are going to come shoot me. You know, like I'm not concerned.
Well, they
about
don't threaten to shoot you.
Right.
Even people in power, even elected officials
Right.
who dissent from the far left base, they're not being threatened with, violence or lynching or whatever.
Well, they weren't until, let's be straightforward. I mean, there's been violence targeted towards a lot of Democratic officials in recent years, and it hasn't all come from the right. And we've talked about Luigi Mangione and kind of the violence coming from the left towards, towards a man, Brian, whatever his name is, who was the CEO of the major health insurance company, and, murdered this person in cold blood, and we still see, and I'll kind of address some discussions about him later on in the episode, we still see a lot of kind of support for that act of violence in a way that's different. And then this past week, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, someone broke into his home and lit on fire the governor's mansion while he was in it, threw essentially Molotov cocktails and burned a significant portion of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. That was someone who was angry over his positions over Israel and Gaza.
Wow.
So, again, there is violent tendencies that are existing on both sides right now. It's not the same. I just want to clarify again, it's not the same. But we have to call out all of it. You have to call both sides out. When, that Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot those Republicans at the baseball game, several years ago, you guys may not even remember that. That was, immensely problematic, and I called it out, and there were people who were upset that I called that out. I'm going to call out both sides if you're getting into violent extremes. But yeah, the far extreme right has been much more violent historically, dating all the way back to the Oklahoma City bombings, which were coming up on the 30th anniversary of this week. That has been a threat for a long time. And so there's a lot of Republicans who are now not just afraid, I'm going to lose my job. It is, I might actually get assassinated. And that's a scary place for us to be living in right now, when we're in this violent powder keg. And that's what I think, the senator was referring to. We're all afraid. We are all actively afraid. And let's lead this into the fact that the administration sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a legal resident of the state of Maryland, my home state, sent him, arrested, detained, and sent him to a prison in El Salvador, not just a prison, a hellhole in El Salvador. And they have admitted that they weren't supposed to do that. And Twice.
On record, in court.
Yes, and the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, says you must bring him back. And the Trump administration, which could very easily just say, hey man, send him back to us, they are refusing to do so. They have said, no, we're not going to. They're going to defy the Supreme Court. We are in a constitutional crisis right now where the president is ignoring court orders. He is doing what Andrew Jackson did hundreds of years ago, when Andrew Jackson told then Chief Justice John Marshall, the Chief Justice has made his decision, now let him enforce it. There is no means to enforcing it other than the Justice Department. And the Justice Department is controlled by President Trump. That is a wing of Trump's authority. And so we're in a completely uncharted constitutional crisis right now. And this man, in the meantime, who there is no evidence that has been provided by anyone that he is involved in gang activity, that came out of nowhere.
It did. I mean, it came out of literal racial profiling.
Yeah.
That was like the very first thing that they referenced was quite literally the racial profiling of pictures that they saw of him, and very, very, questionable testimonies.
And tattoos.
But nothing that would ever stand in court, which, it hasn't stood in court. That's the whole thing. Every court ever has been like, yeah, no, that doesn't stand. But hell if it matters to Trump anymore, and that is terrifying. I mean, that is if he can simply get away with this, if we are talking about this multiple months from now and nothing has come of it, that is a power that is scary.
Oh, it's terrifying. And just imagine, what this says is that if you come to the United States and you're detained, we can just send you to another country's prison. This is a crazy thing.
And then for some reason, you become their responsibility, and we can't do anything about it, which is not true.
It's absurd.
Completely not true.
It's absurd without any due process. I mean, they are not going through any due process, and we're sending them to prisons in other countries. This is ridiculous. I mean, this is actually insane. And I'm furious about this. I'm not surprised, but I'm furious because this is the strong-arm sort of mentality. This is the sort of decision that you make if you're a government that wants to scare people. And that is what the Trump administration clearly wants to do. And they're even saying...
This is what you do if you're a dictatorship.
Well, that's what they believe.
That's the thing.
And they're even saying
this is what you do when you have enemies and you're like, goodbye, enemies.
Yeah. I mean, talk about Richard Nixon and his enemies list.
Seriously.
This is way worse. And this is a administration that is now openly discussing sending U.S. citizens, deporting U.S. citizens. First of all, deporting.
The homegrowns, as he calls it. Yeah.
Explain this to me. Deporting U.S. citizens. Deporting to where? What you're saying is you want to throw them in prison, but in a different country. That's not deporting. They're here legally. They're U.S. citizens. It's absolutely insane.
That's kidnapping.
It is actual kidnapping. This man has been kidnapped, and he has been sent to another country where it is dangerous for him to be. The whole reason that he was not deported was because a judge laid down a ruling that said it was dangerous for him to be taken specifically to El Salvador. And where has Trump sent him? To a prison in El Salvador. It's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating.
It's frustrating. It is beyond unconscionable. It's a severe infringement on not just their constitutional rights, but their human rights. This is beyond, the laws of our nation. This is like the law of man, or law of person, right? This is like the law of humanity. Modern society abides by a set of universal rules that we have certain protections to life, every modern country abides by this universal understanding that there are certain things that should not be infringed upon, right? Our life, our health, our safety, all these things. And now here is the biggest country in the world saying, fuck that. I don't care about that.
And before anyone comes in here and says, oh, but that's your feelings, that's not in the law. No. This country was established with the belief in human rights and the belief that there were certain rights that were inalienable. As written in the Declaration of Independence, there are inalienable rights, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those rights don't come from a king. They don't come from a government. They come from our existence on this planet, from the moment you are born.
And rights that were so impactful at the time that they were really established, that it created a domino effect, which has now been the groundwork for constitutions all across the world, all across humanity. That's how impactful and important that was. It wasn't just the U.S. being the U.S. Like, literally, such an important moment in human history that it is now the basis for nearly all constitutions in modern societies across all of the human race. Without even getting to like the political divide and like the understanding of what this means, mind you, this stuff comes from the 10 fucking commandments. Okay, like a lot of like this understanding is like it comes from like certain moral principles that are deep rooted in every religion, every major religion on earth, and certainly Christianity. So you cannot dare think that this is some sort of political discussion, because you will find those moral principles in any governing like spiritual body or moral code known to man. Like, this is not something that is only found in certain subsects of people or certain groups. This is something found universally across every moral guiding document known to man. So to say it's not an infringement upon our rights is like you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, I am just...
If you want to sit back and pretend this is for some reason, this is okay. If you want to sit back because you're like, well, it's my president, I'm going to sit back and just be like, that's fine, you know, like he was a this or that. First off, no, he wasn't. Second off, how can you say that? Because no matter who you might say that you are, or where you politically lean or whatever, there will be some moral guiding principle that you follow that is in direct violation to the actions being done by our government right now.
Yeah. And
whether you're a Christian, a Catholic, an atheist, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you are. This is a violation of those fundamental moral principles, no matter where you're from or who you are.
Even Scientologists.
Even Scientologists.
Sorry, just had to bring up the mood a little bit because it's just this is infuriating, yes. And we're not.
Tom Cruise would agree with this.
Tom Cruise, I mean, we need some Mission Impossible shit to go get this guy back. I mean, seriously, where is Ethan Hunt when we need him? Send him in there and get this guy back. Because the reality is, look, and Fox News, of course, will only talk about this. They'll only put out this report that says that he's involved in human trafficking. He was suspected of human trafficking. Okay. First of all, that's a weak-ass report and a weak-ass suspicion. Never arrested, never charged, anything like that. If that's the case, then prove it in a freaking court of law like you have to do with everything else. Prove it in a court of law and send him to face repercussions for that, if convicted, in our country. We are not sending people to other countries to face justice without due process. This is ridiculous. They can do it to any of you.
You know what's funny about that, too?
Absolutely infuriating.
It's so interesting that all of a sudden we're doing this thing where it's like we're desperate to get people off of the country, right? Have them be El Salvador's prison problem, right? And they want this, by the way. It's a private-ass prison. Like, they're making so much money probably doing this.
We're paying
on top
them.
Of that, on top of the fact that we're paying them, that there is some insane money in that, in the industry, but definitely in that prison. Like, let's not get that twisted. But here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about that. is that we're sending people out there because we believe that's like, justice or whatever, right? But for years and years leading to this point, we've always been about getting criminals prosecuted here. We always wanted gang members and, cartel leaders extradited to the U.S. to face U.S. justice, because we knew that U.S. justice was less flawed, I guess, right, if you on paper, and more effective at prosecuting these people than typically the justice systems of their own, their home country, right? If Pablo Escobar wasn't, shot dead, and he was arrested, right? I guarantee you, the U.S. would have made a strong case to get him extradited to the U.S. to face U.S. justice as opposed to Colombian justice, in terms of justice system. Because we know, and we were proud of our justice system being the uncorrupt, actual, enforcers of justice in the way that we see the best way, right? As opposed to other countries. And now what are we doing? We're flying over the heads of our so-called, proper justice system, uncorruptible justice system, and saying, no. We're letting those guys take care of it. We're letting El Salvador take care of it because we trust them, apparently, more than we trust our own justice system. Talk about a flip, right? Mm-hmm.
This is a fantastic point you just made. I mean, that's brilliant. I had not even dawned on me there until you just mentioned that. But yeah, what a crazy turn of events that we are now, shipping people out instead of trying to have people face justice here. Wow. Again, this is a story that's just going to continue. We can't let this go away. This cannot go away, and I'm going to make a commitment here on behalf of the two of us that we're going to keep bringing this up repeatedly until this is addressed, because this is not okay. It wasn't okay even before it was him that we're shipping people who are coming into our country just because we suspect them of gang activity, that we're shipping them to a prison in El Salvador. That's not okay. But this is especially heinous in that the government has admitted that he wasn't supposed to be deported, and he was anyway, and now they're refusing to get him back.
And they're gloating
about it.
And they're
saying that, yes, and they're saying that the fact that we care about it means that we are defending child traffickers and whatnot. And, honestly, with the way the American population is, the chances are that'll be a winning political argument for them. But I'm willing to die on this hill. This is ridiculous. This is just, politics be damned. This is heinous, disgusting behavior, and I'm sick of it. This is out of control. This is fascism. It's like the Gestapo rounding people up right now.
It is, and I'm glad that you say, I'm glad that you reinforce the idea that this is not even really a political statement, because it isn't. It goes so much more beyond that. This is on the basis of fundamental American principles, American principles, not left or right principles, American principles, that a single decision maker can do this. And then when he is told, don't do that, or reverse your decision, or whatever the courts say, he laughs at them. He laughs at them, and his spokespeople, I should say, gloat in front of the media. They gloat and say, he's never coming back. What did Carolyn Levitt say a few days ago? He will never be a Maryland father ever again, or something to that fact. There was something to that fact.
He will never return and have a normal life in Maryland again.
Talk about disgusting. Who cares who that is? Mean. That could be anybody. To say that about a person.
And this is something that this is a broader point that I want to make. About what happened and how things have changed. We are ideologically segregated in this country in a way that has allowed us to forget about the humanity of others. So 20 years ago, the United States was a much more conservative country as a whole than what it is right now. In spite of the fact that the government is more conservative than it's ever been, the country was more conservative politically 20 years ago. They would have never stood for this. And it was because we saw each other in some semblance as Americans. We saw each other as human beings. There was a desire to do this. And what has happened in the last 2 decades, and it started before that, is this political segregation. And when I say political segregation, if you look at the 1920s and early 30s, there were people in Germany who were actively promoting creating these Jewish quarters. And they still exist in many of these cities, though there aren't very many Jews that lived in them because so many of them were exterminated. But there were these Jewish quarters, and many people didn't do this just with a mindset of, oh, I don't like Jewish people. It was genuinely I'm promoting like a preservation of culture. There were some people who were doing that, and then there were others in the Nazi Party who were saying things like that, and really just we need to get the Jews in one specific area. And the goal being, if you can get someone out away from general society, where you don't see them on a day-to-day basis, or you don't engage with them on a consistent basis, then it is much easier to make people think that they are not human. And so that was a designed kind of segregation. In the United States, we have voluntarily segregated ourselves on the issues of politics. We want to live around people who share our own beliefs and ideologies, and we don't want to live near people who don't share our beliefs and ideologies. And as such, we have lost this ability to look at the people we disagree with as human beings. And that poses issues, again, on both sides of the extremes. But when you do that, that means that it is easier to turn the other cheek and to ignore and to look away when someone is being detained when they're going into court, for a civil infraction, when someone is being dragged away or their windows are being smashed open to be taken off, or when a person who, maybe was born in another country but is here legally is being detained and interrogated and treated like less than a human being. All of this becomes easier because we have segregated ourselves. And when we talk about reunited states and the general mindset of this podcast and the movement that I hope will kind of set in America, and at some point in time we will wake up from this terrible dream and realize we can't hate everyone. We have to find a way to engage with each other and people that we disagree with. We have to find a way to coexist with them on not just from a distance. You have to be able to be in the same space and coexist with one another. And that's how you bring people together. This is the results of what happens when we don't do that. When we voluntarily segregate ourselves, all of a sudden, people are no longer looking at each other as human beings. And it's very clear that this administration does not look at people who disagree with them as human beings. They look at them as the enemy, and it makes it easier for them to justify to their supporters why they are removing them, violently removing them from the country and targeting them.
That was a fantastic point. Oh my God. That was good. Whew. And of course, I can't agree with you more. This is so much bigger than partisan politics at this point that, all I can really say, man, to that is, man, preach. You're absolutely right. This is a result of a demonization that has been slowly happening and increasing over certain groups in this country by other groups, and vice versa, right? It's just a demonization of the other. And the moment you can do that, right, the moment they're not human, you can do whatever you want. So absolutely true. And all I have to add to that is that the power this gives to the executive branch of the government is insane. Like, I love that you mentioned, like immigration policy and like position in the past, because you're right. It was very different back then. And we may have been harder back then, right? There have been instances of huge, immigration reform in the country. We talked about that, a number of months ago now, that has been a result of Democratic cabinets and Republican cabinets. But the way in which we treated it was so different. I mean, Bill Clinton has deported, like, he had some of the most sprawling, immigration reforms in modern history, right? In the last, 5-6 presidents. Like, he has done more for more anti-immigration reform than anybody else. And that dude's a Democrat, right? But it was different. You're right. Like, stuff like this would never have stood. This would never have happened, not before or after Clinton. That wouldn't have happened under Bush.
No, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, either Bush.
None of them would have tolerated the cruelty in which we are enacting these policies and the very, very heinous kind of treatment of other human beings. That's just not something that we ever have tolerated outside of, the only thing I can think of is Guantanamo Bay, and that was in reaction to terrorism. These are foreign nationals, and I don't agree with it, and I thought it was despicable then. And as a country, when we found out what was happening at Guantanamo Bay, we were outraged. I mean, we were outraged because we don't treat humans like that. Even terrorists, we don't treat like that.
Right, and guess who wants to reopen it?
Yeah.
So, all that tells me when looking at the fact, looking at how unprecedented this is so specifically, all this tells me is that, no other Republican or Democrat would have stood for this. Trump is doing it. And in my mind, it's all in his game plan to take power. That's the game plan, do I think that Trump very specifically cares this much about this random dude from Maryland?
No.
I don't think he does. I don't think Trump would care twice if he was in the U.S. or outside the U.S. I don't think it's about that at all. It's not about that at all. This is about maintaining the power that he is now taking and seeing, it's like when you're a kid, right? And you want to test your relationship with your parents, right? And see how much you can get away with. Because the more you can get away with, the more power you have, right? That's the whole point, right? Can I get away with not cleaning, the dishes or whatever? Can I get away with not cleaning my room? And the more you get away with, the more power you have over your parents. This is that, right? This is Trump, and the parents are the law of the land. And Trump is just being like, all right, let me pick something and see what I can get away with. All right, I've deported the guy. Great, I got away with that. And now they're telling me to bring him back. Well, what if I just say no? What are we going to do? And we're finding out in real time what happens when he says no. And unfortunately, the answer looks like a whole lot of nothing. And that's the scariest thing. Because if he can say no to the highest court in the land and nothing happens to him, checks and balances, I don't know what those are anymore.
Well, the good news is, Tyler, we sent a dildo into space with a whole bunch of women on it, and that was feminism central, apparently. But on that note, I do have to say...
Baby, she's a firework.
Baby, she's a firework. I do have to say, I personally thought the reaction to this was a little bit extreme. I don't like it. Don't think it should have happened. Thought it was stupid. Certainly wasn't feminist. But I did see, a post that said, this isn't feminism, this isn't science. These are awful women who have dedicated their short time on Earth covering up the crimes of even more wicked men. Okay, come on. Gayle King is not an awful person. She's a journalist, a reporter. She's certainly not some prop for the far right. Do I think that this was a publicity stunt for rich, wealthy men? Absolutely, and it was dumb. But 6 months from now, we won't even remember that this happened. So some of the reaction to it I find to be really excessive and bizarre. And honestly, just bringing more attention to it than maybe it should have. And that, some of the things, again, we're talking about fascism here. I am perturbed and angered by some of the very unserious behavior by certain people on the left right now, in a time that is very serious. And for all the people who are chanting about the people in Congress who are not taking this seriously, yada, 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 I mean, I just have to say, someone posted the other day, I saw this, if Kamala was president, we would all be at brunch, saying that there's a silver lining in the fact that Kamala lost, and if Kamala was president, we wouldn't be talking about all the atrocities that she's doing. This is ridiculous. These are not the same thing. Stop it. You're being absolutely absurd. To sit there and say under any circumstances that this country would be in a worse place or even remotely similar place with Kamala Harris as president is ridiculous. And so I get that you're trying to run as far off the cliff as possible to the left here, but you've run out of room. That with me, I'm done with that. That's insane. What's going on right now is fascism, and you're sitting here throwing bombs at Kamala Harris for some reason. I see this crap. I see, another person who posted about Luigi Mangione and talking about Luigi Mangione and David Hogg should run for president together. First of all, and the person that posted that, I should say, is somebody I know who works in U.S. politics, lives in the Beltway, works in an activist progressive group, and posted this very serious post about David Hogg being a candidate for president in the next election with Luigi Mangione as his running mate. Now, I just have to say, first and foremost, neither one of them are constitutionally allowed to run for president in the next election. First and foremost, you morons.
Yeah, but we already established the Constitution doesn't mean shit.
Apparently, the Constitution doesn't mean anything.
That was the first 30 minutes of the podcast.
So, David Hogg, I like, for the record. He's the Parkland shooting survivor. He's the vice chair for the DNC. It is interesting that he is talking about running primarying certain Democrats, and I don't know how I feel about that because the DNC has never done that. I do at least appreciate that he said he will not primary Democrats in competitive House races. So I do appreciate that. At least I think he's a reasonable person for the most part. But Luigi Mangione, I mean, how many times do we have to say this? This is insane. This glorification of this man who shot someone in the back. That's what he did. He made a plan and he went and he shot someone in the back, and it has changed nothing. And if anything, it has endangered more of our lives. This is a ridiculous fetishization over shooting someone from certain people, and that's just, I'm never going to be okay with that. I'm over it. I'm so done with this glorification and martyrization of a murderer. And so I had to get this off my chest because it's really setting me off, some of the crap that I'm seeing between people freaking out about the dildo in the space or whatever. There are serious things that we need to be focusing on, and you guys are not being serious people. And if you want to know why people hate Democrats, it's because of that. It's because you are giving us all a bad name when you talk about nonsense like that, and you spend all of your time and effort on nonsense that isn't impacting anyone's life right now. when we're dealing with human beings being shipped out of the country and actual threats and global trade wars. This is crazy. And so I have reached my limit with some of that stuff. Like, I'm not going to sit here and just totally act like that doesn't exist. It exists, and it's not productive. It is actively counterproductive for the movement we are trying to build, which is how do we save this country from becoming entirely gripped in fascism for the duration of our lifetime.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Should we move into things we should all agree on?
I think so. Let's do it.
I think you should start, my friend.
All right, because I have actually a positive one for a change.
Oh, I need it.
No, it's something good. So, something that I've been looking at recently that's been a very heartwarming thing for me personally, because I'm a huge nerd, right? I play video games and board games and D&D and all these things. But I'm also, yeah. But I'm also, I'm also really into fitness. I like going to the gym. I like getting in shape. I like learning different sports and all these things. And I think growing up for me, those two spheres were always like the furthest thing apart from each other. Like you can be a little dork, playing a board game or watching anime or something, but also be, on the varsity team and like lift weights and do all these things. And I did both of those things, but it was very difficult sometimes to kind of like find a group that actually also encompassed that circle, that included kind of both of those elements. And it's funny, I was talking to some friends. I was actually playing D&D with some friends, and two of my friends that are in that group are in the same boat. Like they're also like super in great shape, and they were in great shape growing up, but they also did all these nerdy things. And so they would agree that like they were in this kind of weird pocket where people didn't know how to like treat them, right? Or how to react to them. Because you expect, scrawny little nerd, right? But they're like built. So it's like, what do? Do you bully them? I don't know if you really can. But recently, I've been seeing a lot more actual like gyms and entities, groups come up, both in real life as well as on the internet, of like workout groups that are literally just like nerd workout groups. And they do exactly that. They go to the gym and they lift and they're in crazy good shape, but they're like massive nerds, and all their workouts are like, based on extremely like nerdy kind of practices and archetypes. And I think that's really, really cool. I think it's really cool that there are now like these businesses that are reaching out to a very specific clientele. And this is like wholly a good thing. This is fitness. Like there's nothing bad about fitness. It's fitness, and so this is like a wholly good like thing to be into, and it's being promoted to a group of individuals that at least in my opinion have historically been marginalized as being scrawny, weak, or unhealthy, fat. Like just the opposite of fit and in shape. And now we're getting like businesses being like, no, like we target that group because you should get the opportunity to be in shape. There is one in LA here that I want to shout out to called Hero's Journey. A friend of mine is a big part of it on
I love
Instagram.
the name.
Yeah, no, it's great. Every like week they come up with some sort of a crazy awesome workout routine that's like that's based off of something. Like it'll be like, I don't know, like the Iron Man workout routine or something like that, right? And it's like, it's all focused on things that will get you like that target specific muscle groups if you want to attain something like Iron Man in the comics or whatever, or in the show, or sorry, in the movie and stuff. Other things too, like they'll have like a He-Man, workout routine if you want to get built like He-Man or something. It's cool though. It's cool. It's like, it's stuff that's so like tailor-made to that like fandom and those interests that it's motivating to them. Like they want that, it's like, who doesn't want to be, like built like Kratos from like God of War or something like that, like that's awesome. Like those guys are like great inspirations if you're trying to, reach a physique, and all the better if it helps people who otherwise wouldn't really be motivated or be in the right circles to be pushed to go to the gym and achieve those results. So places like Hero's Journey, you guys are awesome, do some amazing work. And all the companies as well that I see, like online groups that are forming, that are helping people get into fitness that otherwise are not really targeted by traditional like fitness companies and gyms. You know, good for you. You're doing great. And yeah, that's what I got. Just a nice little positive things we should all agree on.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. Really, that is something we should all be able to agree on. What a cool kind of I guess movement. And you're right. You know, when you think about nerds, I don't always think about fitness. That's not one of the first things that comes to mind. But I do think that there has been kind of a blending in the last decade or two of kind of the stereotypes of people and tropes that we think of people, and you find out more and more that there are mutual interests, there are crossover interests of people who are jocks and also nerds and whatever, and so that's
like they're like the last during the last football season, I forget his name, the dude who like some dude was like in a interview with somebody, and he pulled out like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. And he started talking about how he really likes the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. And I was like, that's so weird and out of pocket, but it's also kind of awesome.
I mean, the lead in my last musical that I just directed is a track star. One of the top students in my musical theater course right now, is one of the students is a football star. He's taken multiple theater courses in his time. We have nursing students. That's the great thing is that
that's awesome.
There's there's crossover opportunities. People are always looking to expand, and they have interests that you would never have imagined in looking at them on the surface, or just at face value. So, fantastic,
so cool,
and great things we can all agree on. Mine, I want to talk about what I call the charisma defense. And, I want to talk about something that I'm sure is very familiar. This is probably going to ring some bells to some of you. But a certain celebrity that can do something unspeakable, absolutely monstrous, and somehow still walk away a hero to a certain segment of the population. And, here you have someone who can be backed into a corner, surrounded by evidence that would bury anyone else, and yet somehow they escape consequences because they've convinced enough people that the real enemy is the system trying to hold them accountable. I'm talking about a man who used his charm, his fame, his smile, and his story to sway public opinion. A man who found a way to make his own criminal trial not about him, but about something bigger. About us, about the people, about justice, about how broken everything already was. Found a community of people who had been lied to. Excuse me. He found a community of people who had been lied to, beaten down, disrespected for generations, and he said to them, they're not coming after me because of what I did. They're coming after me because they hate you too. And it worked. They stood by him. They believed him when he said he didn't do it. Not because the facts made any sense, but because the facts didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the feeling, the cause, the pain they'd carried long before he ever stood trial. Of course, I'm talking about O.J. Simpson. Who did you think I was talking about? See, this isn't new. This moment we're living in, where millions of people line up behind a man who's clearly guilty of about 7 felonies every day before breakfast. It's not a glitch in the Matrix. It's not some brand new American virus. This is a reboot. It's happened so many times before, the same story just cast with different characters. In 1995, O.J. became the vessel for a specific kind of righteous rage, a fury built from years of police violence, racism, and injustice. And the trial became something that wasn't really about whether O.J. killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. It was about whether the LAPD had any right to judge anyone after what they'd done to Rodney King and so many others. It was about a system that had never cared about black lives suddenly pretending to care. Now, let's flip it. Today, Trump is the vessel for a different kind of rage. A rage about being left behind, about not recognizing your own country anymore, about a culture that's changing faster than some people can handle. And just like O.J., Trump supporters don't care what he did. They care about who's accusing him. They don't trust the system, so they don't trust the charges. They see his crimes as less important than their resentments. They see him as an imperfect vehicle to achieve the justice that they feel they have been denied. So let's stop pretending that this moment is unprecedented. Let's stop acting shocked that millions of people are willing to ignore facts in favor of feelings. America's been doing that since long before red hats and stolen elections. But here's the thing. Accountability doesn't get easier the longer we wait. And the truth doesn't stop being true just because someone's good on TV. And we should all agree about that.
That was great. The juice is in fact loose. Loose in hell now.
Yeah. It is crazy. I was watching a documentary about O.J. and I've always been fascinated by the O.J. Simpson trial. The funny thing is my mother was obsessed with the O.J. trial. She watched it constantly. I remember it's very, very young. I was 2 years old, but I remember O.J.
It was
being
a big deal
this
for
big deal.
us too out in L.A., man. It was everything. Yeah.
Of course it was. It was this enormous deal, but you had, two very different wings of America, and that was largely, divided by race. With Trump, it's not really divided by race. It's divided by class and working status. And what you have is a group of people who, again, feel that they've been wronged, and they're not entirely wrong about that. That's the thing where I think they get irritated, is that Democrats come out and say, oh, yeah, it's not actually as bad as you're making it out to be. You just don't understand. No, I do understand. I don't like certain things. Now, we can sit here and just say that it's all about them being racist or them being, homophobic, transphobic, any of the phobics. And that is accurate with a certain group of people. But it's not accurate for everybody. And clumping them all together with that just pisses people off even more. And so we haven't addressed the actual problems, actual reasons why they feel this way. They do have legitimate economic concerns about their communities being left behind that have not been addressed by the Democratic Party in a long time and really weren't addressed by the Republican Party prior to Trump coming into office. And the funny thing is, they're not being addressed by Trump. He just makes them feel like they are. And so, again, it doesn't matter what the facts are. O.J., committed murder in the most ridiculous, insane, obvious way that was, there was literally no other suspect. There was no other logical explanation. There was DNA everywhere. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter to the jurors at the time because that's not what the trial was about. The trial was about the system. And for Trump, they don't care about the facts. They just don't. It's not about that. It is about the overall system and feeling like you have a grievance, feeling like you are lacking justice. So.
Well said. Well said. With that, I think we are going to call it here. Thanks everyone for listening. This has been a pretty awesome episode. I hope you guys learned something. Hope we gave you something to think about, something to talk about with others. As always, please engage with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at ReUnitedStatesPod. And find this podcast wherever you like to find podcasts. But as always, please reach out to your neighbor. Talk to someone you haven't spoken to before. Reunite the States. From Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
From Manchester, New Hampshire, I'm Jesse Saywell.
And this has been Reunited States.
When the whole world has got you down, and there's no one else around, turn that crown right upside